Well, hello. I'm so glad some of you came. I was like, will anyone come to a Substack Live? But I am really thrilled that you're here. And the reason that I really wanted to chat is I've had like a surprising number of people talk to me about how they're trying to keep up with what's going on in the schools. And they're worried that their kids are not going to get great grades when they get there. Oh my God, you're still talking about candy. I'm so glad. Bounty, Baby Ruth, all those good foods. Keep putting them in there. People love to hear about candy. But I've heard a lot of questions about evaluation, like how do we know our kids are on track? How do we know that the homeschooling we're doing is actually effective? How many of you ask that question and worry about evaluating your children? Like, is there in your mind like this invisible rubric where you're thinking, okay, I want my child to be able to go back to school at any moment. And I need to know that I've done enough that when they get there, they'll be able to get A's and B's. Who's feeling that in this call? Anybody? I'm curious because this seems to be the question that I'm getting a lot lately. And I wanted to discuss it with you. Let's say used to, but you've helped me past that. Keep preaching, sister. Yes, definitely worry about that. That's so great. One of the things that I wanted to share today, and this is what prompted me to schedule a live. I was working with a group of school teachers who work for a micro school system. There were about 30 of them. They were all over the country, and we were talking about how to teach writing. So they are very much in a context that relies on grading. You get an A, you get a B plus, you get a C minus. Grades are supposed to mean something. And so before I talk about my perspective on grades, let me throw it out to you. What does a grade mean? If you see a grade on your paper, what does that mean to you? How do you interpret the grade? So your teacher read your paper, put a few comments, and you got a B. What does that mean? What does it tell you? How does it help you? What is the value of that grade to you, the person who received it? Any thoughts? I'm going to drink some tea and give you a second to respond because now I have Twix caramel all stuck in my teeth. Um, Anybody? Here are some of the things I've heard from adults when I ask that question. What do grades mean? Oh, as one of you said, you either did or didn't make the grader happy with your efforts or your lack thereof. Uh, Another of you, Mandy, says it affects how you view yourself. Someone else said they had an unhealthy tie between themselves, their own self-worth, and their grades. If I wasn't getting an A, then I wasn't good enough. Kara, she personally judged herself. Very much. Okay, I promise I won't do that again. That was gross. Um, that's right. Grades tell you a story that you make up in your mind about how the teacher sees you. Has anyone gotten a B and thought, oh, I'm so glad I got a B. That really helps me know exactly what I need to do to improve my work? Has anyone had that happen? You're like, oh, thank goodness this teacher gave me a C. I know now that this C means I need to improve in these ways. Does anyone have that experience of grades where you feel relieved and glad to know that at this point in time you aren't earning an A? So there is, meaningful information from the letter C that makes you definitely not get a C next time. Anybody have that feeling? Because here's what I know about grades, and this is what kind of blew the minds of these teachers when I was speaking to them earlier this week. Grades are for the adults. They're not for the children. They're not for kids. They are for a teacher who submits reports on children to two places, to parents who are not in the classroom and to the administration who scores people in order to understand like a general perspective of the level of the student how many honors classes to offer, how well these students are learning. It's a way of evaluating the effectiveness of the teacher, and it gives information to adults. It has nothing to do with the kids. Kids don't need grades. They don't do better when they see a grade. In fact, the anxiety that goes with having to get a specific grade is often quite harmful to kids. In fact, if you were a person who got straight A's, how much anxiety and energy did you spend trying to maintain that grade point average? And for those of you who didn't get straight A's, how much did you feel like you weren't as smart because of it? How many people who got B's or C's or even had like what we would consider a reasonable GPA at 3.5 felt like this was some kind of statement about intelligence, not just effectiveness in writing an essay or taking a test, but it was a verdict on whether or not you were an intelligent person. Marcy says it so well. Even though I got great grades, I felt that that was my only value to my family. Wow, there's a statement. There's a statement. I remember when I was in junior high, I was getting C's in English. Me, founder of Brave Writer. Do you want to know why? Because I didn't care. The grade didn't matter. I probably had some version of undiagnosed ADHD. I'd forget to turn in assignments. If I had like a weekly recurring assignment, I definitely never turned that in. That wasn't happening. I couldn't remember something week to week. I was getting a C. And a teacher, not even my teacher, I was in a shared classroom that had two teachers, and the teacher that was in the shared room, she came to me one time and she said, Julie, why aren't you getting an A in this class? And here is my reaction. I don't know. I don't really care about getting an A. She said, yeah, but you're really good at English. In fact, you're a really good writer. I think you could get an A. And I was like, oh, I never really thought about it. She said, you know what you need? You need best friends who get A's. And I was like, well, there's an idea. She introduced me to the girl who was the straight A student in that class who became my best friend for a couple of years. I never got another B. But suddenly I had this identity that said, I have to get an A. Otherwise, teachers will be disappointed in me. They will think I'm not living up to my potential. It started a chronic sense of underachieving. I didn't have the underachieving feeling when I was just not caring. The second I cared, underachievement. When we're talking about homeschool, then, what we're really, really saying is that we are more interested in the learning experience of the child than measuring the child with an adult rubric that communicates information to the adults in the life of the children. Homeschooling opts out of that. We put the experience of the learner at the center. So if I think back to myself, and you can do this too while we're talking about this, I think back to myself in junior high. I loved writing. I had my own story notebook that I wrote in every day. I put a beautiful collage on the cover. I used to walk down to this one very busy traffic area that had a center median divide, and I would sit with my notebook while cars were driving by next to the rose bushes, writing short stories. I used to play this card game that was all about poets, and I didn't have someone to play it with me, so I played both sides of the cards. I used to sit in my bedroom and write descriptions of the most boring items in my room because I thought if I could make an interesting description of like my school desk, then I was a really good writer. No one saw any of this. This was all happening in my own time. So if you were going to give me a school assignment that was boring and I had to choose between writing a story and filling out some paperwork for a teacher, oh, easy choice. I'm going to write in the storybook. All the learning I was doing was missed. No one saw it. It was private. It was happening because of my motivation. And yet I was being told in school that I was behaving in a subpar way, a way people had to worry about, a way a teacher had to call out to me to get my attention. Now, naturally, getting A's turned out to be an advantage. Got me in honors English, where I thrived. Got me into UCLA, which I loved. I'm not saying there was no value given back to me for putting in the work to get A's. But what I will say is this, for all of us, once we're on the student path where grades matter, what we've done is we've exchanged personal value of learning for performance for adults. And what we're discovering with children, homeschooling has helped us discover this. So have all of the educators who work with special needs kids. What we are discovering is that performance-based education creates anxiety and in some kids, depression. It undermines self-directed learning, the kind of learning that not only you value, but can apply to a meaningful use in your life. Now, here's the thing. Schools are not going to change because they have a whole bunch of bureaucratic tasks associated with teaching. The parents aren't in the room. The teachers have to design assignments that cover a certain scope and sequence of curriculum. They have to prepare for year-end state testing. They have to submit those grades to the district so the district can evaluate their effectiveness. That's going to continue. Here is the good news about being a home educator. You can do it differently. You can actually apply what we've found out from research, that learning comes from the inside, that real learning connotes use. If something isn't going to be used, it will not be learned. That quote comes from William Rhinesmith, an education reformer. What they've discovered when they've studied kids who know things, learning is animated by some kind of personal benefit. So I can already hear some of you saying, yeah, but Julie, my kid hates learning. They don't want to learn their times tables. We've just got to get through it. And one of the ways that I help them get through it is I correct their work. I show them the problems they missed. I make them rework the problems. I want them to get 100%. How many of you feel that way? You've got to kind of push your children through their education because they don't like learning. How many of you have that experience? Anyone? I know this is on delay, so I ask a question, then I've got to wait a moment. It's probably a good time for more candy. I've got M&Ms. You want to come to my house? Starbursts. Yeah, for some parts of schooling, we do feel the pressure, right? We feel the pressure to help them get through what they don't like. And I'll be honest, I used textbooks for math and I had phonics workbooks. I'm not saying there's no role for all of that, but here's what I'd like to offer you as a suggestion. Don't grade it. I'm not saying you can't go through and look at the problems and see if they're understanding, but that's very different than correcting. Can you feel that slight shift? I'm going to read through this page of problems you did in math to see if you're understanding multiplication. Not, I'm going to read through this problem of math multiplication and see what you got wrong. Who can feel the difference between that? One is seeing if the idea is clicking for the student. So here's what I would do. If you're reading this page and you see, oh, they got 6 out of 10 of these multiplications correct, I'm going to ask myself, what's happening in these other 4? And what can we do tomorrow to kind of address those? Is it that the first 6 were, the low 8s in multiplication, but when they get up to the 8 times 7, 8 times 8, 8 times 9, it's difficult? Or are they having struggles with carrying versus borrowing in addition and subtraction? Maybe with phonics, they're getting tripped up by the C and the K and the different sounds they can make. You're looking to understand what they are internalizing, and you're tailoring the next lesson to help them overcome whatever that gap is. But you are not grading, you're not correcting, you're not fixing, you're not showing them what they got wrong. In writing, the way this works is instead of focusing so much on improving the writing, we start by appreciating what they've already put out. One of the least favorite things kids tell us over and over is they don't like revision. That's not actually true. It's the only words they have for the experience they're having. And here's the experience happening to kids. They say, I don't like revision. Translation is, I just gave you my best effort, and you're telling me it wasn't good enough yet. This is the best effort I have for you. So now you want me to do something different to it? You're showing me what I didn't do that I should have already known how to do? That's how they understand revision. But what if it was a completely different way? What if we started out with, they hand you this piece and you're like, wow, look at all those words you wrote. Thank you for writing all those words and letting me read them. I'm going to go get a, cup of tea and a bag of M&Ms. And I'm going to sit down in this chair and read what you wrote. And then you do. You go, you get in the chair, you cross your legs, you take your sip of tea, you lift up the piece of writing, and you read it like a person interested in the thoughts the writer was conveying. You read it like you care about what they want you to know. And so you go through, and sure, it's a second grader's first draft. It's a fourth grader's first draft. It might be incomplete. It might have bad spelling. It might be missing steps. It might not have great descriptive detail. But come on, they got their first unction out of their bodies onto a page for someone to read. They took all the scrambled feelings and thoughts and put language to it and created something that you yourself, their parent, could read and enjoy. So when you do it, even if it's really boring, like Halloween candy is tasty, I love Halloween, it's so fun with my friends, I think it'd be fun to throw a pumpkin, I wish it were dark right now, I'm going to go get dressed. Like, that doesn't feel like riveting writing, right? But if that's the first thing that they could get down, can't you appreciate that? Can't you start from, oh my gosh, I'm excited about Halloween too. What's your favorite candy? Oh, Twix. Amazing. Mine is Baby Ruth. Yeah, I'm with you on this part too. Smashing pumpkins is really fun. That's a fun tradition we have in our family. I'm so glad you included that in this paragraph. You can stay away from technical errors, from spelling mistakes, from leaving out detail, because the first urge of a writer is to reach a reader, and you're their cherished and prized reader. Did you know that the only goal your child has is to please you? That's it. Oh, sure, it doesn't look like it because they get squirrely sometimes. And sometimes they test to see if you like them no matter how much they, quote, misbehave. But if we start from the premise that my child really just wants me to be delighted in them, it's a game changer. Totally different than coming with the bespectacled pen. I'm going to show you what you need to improve and fix. No one likes that. That's what a grade does. That's what critique does. That's what evaluation does. It says, here is a standard. It's way up here. You only came this far. I'm going to show you what this gap is and hope that you fix it the next time. But here's how we teach writing. Here's the way I would love you to take advantage of your homeschooling role. Start as a reader. Read their work. Validate what's there. Even if all they wrote is, I hate this is stupid, I'm stuck, you can say, thank you for writing and telling me the truth. That was pretty risky. I get it. Writing is hard. And I really feel that coming off the page right now. That's amazing. Thank you. When we start from this space of really honoring the communication and we help our kids understand that what they offer us is of value, the conversation about skill development goes very differently. 2 days later, you can pull out this same paper and say, you know what, I was thinking more about your piece. I'm wondering if you could tell me more about the kinds of candy that you really like. Like, we could put that right here. What do you think about that? Would that be a good idea? I want to make sure that you get your Twix in there. And would you please put in that I like Baby Ruths because I think that's a good memory from our Halloween too. And then you keep reading and you say, you know what's weird? When you talked about smashing the pumpkins, I immediately remembered when you used that big mallet to do it. Would that be fun to add that in here? Could we add that just to give even more of a picture? Or you could even say something like, help me remember how you smashed the pumpkin last year. What did you use? And then they tell you, and you jot it in the margin. You just give them the words. When we're helping our kids grow, we're not only telling them what they did right or wrong, and then asking them to fix the gap, we're actually modeling how they might go back inside that body and find more words. Because they're in there, but they need somebody to shine the flashlight on where to look. Because for a lot of kids, they don't know what kinds of questions to ask themselves in order to discover the more that they have to say. Similarly, if we're talking about math and they're consistently getting a certain kind of problem wrong, maybe they don't know how to divide fractions after all, and you keep giving them grades and they don't improve, well, now we got to go back to the drawing board. You got to get online and find out what are some tricks that kids benefit from to understand this craziness where we take one of the fractions and flip it upside down and then multiply it across and then reduce. Like, how do I help a kid understand this? Because just giving a lesson and expecting perfect application every single time from a child, can you feel how anxiety producing that would be? Like, that would be absolutely overwhelming to me. If every time I faced something new that I learned, the expectation is that I'll get 100% and an A. What a wild standard we've created in schools. Just think of how insane that is. Go back to when you were first learning to cook. I'm assuming most of you have read a recipe, used a cookbook. Okay, the first time that I was really learning to cook, I lived in another country. I had no cookbooks. All I had were raw ingredients because there were no mixes. There was no internet. I had to learn everything like from scratch. Finally got some recipe books, and they were written by people who lived abroad and were working with ingredients that were non-traditional to me. And here's what I discovered. I could sometimes, on a first try, pull off a perfect meal that tasted the way it was probably supposed to. But most of the time, the first version of that meal was not quite there. Too much salt. Put too much water in the lentils. I didn't use the right balance of curry powder versus cumin, right? I bought a chicken that was too tough. I cut up the vegetables in the wrong way. I forgot to add an ingredient. Like, by the time you've done it for 20 or 30 years, you have a second nature feel about cooking. You can even veer off the recipe because you kind of know how things work. But when you're first learning, not only are you like following every rule perfectly as much as you can, but you're also making mistakes that you don't even know you're making because you don't know the subject. And with children, that's exactly what's happening. They are making mistakes that they don't even know they're making because it's, for them, really tricky to wrap their brains around this new process. It's something they haven't done over and over. One of the ways I like to help parents kind of approximate what it feels like to be a kid is to try something different. So here's a good example. Let's say your kid is learning how to handwrite and their handwriting looks really sloppy to you. And you're like, gosh, you've been working on this letter R, for 6 weeks and it still doesn't look good. And you're thinking in your head, they're not trying. They're not giving it a full effort. You know what I want you to do? Try learning to handwrite with your non-dominant hand. So if you're a right-hander, go get the very same book, the same handwriting book, and start learning to handwrite with your left hand. By the way, how crazy is it that when we write with our right hand, it's automatic, and then we get the left hand and the brain's like, I have no idea what to do with you. Get that experience back into your life. That feeling of, I have no idea what to do with you, because we forget how many repetitions it takes to actually master something. One of the big mistakes homeschoolers make is that the second a child masters something, we immediately pile on a new thing because our brains tell us that if it's harder and it takes work, they must be learning. But sometimes we forget that practicing in ease creates the consolidation, which lays the foundation for the more challenging concept later. So when your kids are starting to show a little bit of mastery, don't be so quick to move off of it. Let them enjoy being good at something. That's the other problem with this performance metric. It's always like, well, you kicked one goal. Next game, you should kick two. Well, now you've done two. It should be three. I mean, would we ever coach students that way in soccer? Would we give them a C because last time they got two goals, but this time they got none? No. We would talk about how they played and what the competition was like and how they could position their body a little differently to have a better angle, to have a better chance of scoring. We would help them achieve their goals, literally, um, literally, figuratively, homonymically, instead of just measuring their performance by some metric that doesn't help them do it better next time. And by the way, doing things better the next time is not always the goal. For me, if I want to play it safe, I'm only going to write 800-word blog-length posts for the rest of my life because I can do those with my eyes closed. I've done them for 40 years, right? I've written 800-word articles and blog-length posts and emails for every day of my life forever. So is that what I'm going to do forever? No, I'm going to want to take the challenge of writing a different kind of writing. But when I do that, it's not going to feel as natural. That skill is going to help me that I've already developed, but I'm going to go through a period where academic writing or fiction or nonfiction feels a little bit unnerving because even though I have this base of skill, I am now tackling something new. And that means there will be some mess and some regression and some anxiety and ambivalence about even taking it on because it feels so big. That's your kids every single day. And the best news is this: your kids love to learn. They do not love evaluation. So if you can take a step back from being the evaluator and instead be the coach. In my book, Help My Kid Hates Writing, I have a whole chapter called Referee or Coach. Do you want to be the referee who's telling them all the rules they broke? Or do you want to be the coach who notices the skill they're developing and can help them actually excel and apply new strategies to acquire the skills they value? Coach or referee, which one do you want to be? Nobody likes the refs. If you want to be liked, be a coach. That doesn't mean that you'll never give criticism, but it will be in the context of pulling for the same goal, right? One of my favorite funny quotes from a football coach is Lou Holtz. And he used to say about his football team, the Notre Dame football team, they would ask him, how is your team going? What do you tell them to make them perform so well? And he used to always say this: the team and I have the same goal, me keeping my job, right? Because if the team started to do poorly, this coach would get fired. I think we can apply this to homeschool. Our goal has to be that our kids don't want to fire us, right? We want to have the same outcome, which is success, satisfied learning. That's what we want for our kids. We want them to be grateful and give us a Gatorade bath because we've been a part of the team that helps them achieve those goals. So we have to retrain our own brains to not constantly default to the referee who is noticing what's going wrong and instead focus on how we can attune to the child and take what they're already good at and use that to grow their skills in another arena. I'm going to look real quick at some of your thoughts and questions. One mom says the ability to hold a thought long enough to write it down is hard for kids, especially ADH kiddos. We celebrate that all on its own. Right now, I let my daughter decide if something needs improvement. If she's happy, I'm happy. Then we separate the discussion of how to revise or how to do it. I love that for you. A lot of times with kids, what we see is a child giving their best effort. By the way, a best effort could be a tired effort, a low, um, a low intensity effort, because some days they're tired. Some days they don't have the same passion or zest. I always say kids are giving you their best. It's just that sometimes their best isn't that great. So you have to understand the context. After your kids have eaten a bowl of candy and gone to Halloween, this year it's on Friday, but like on a Wednesday night, Thursday morning's not going to be a great day for homeschool. Be better to just get up and build with blocks and Legos and listen to read alouds and watch a good movie, right? Think about what level of effort your child can give. You can even ask your child things like, okay, I want to do this little copywork passage with you. How much energy do you have today? Do you have 5 sentences energy or 1 sentence energy? Because I want you to give me your full attention and your best effort and nothing more. So if it's only 1 sentence, perfect. And if you notice your energy flagging, stop. Charlotte Mason says the reason we need to stop when we notice we're not giving our best effort is that we will cultivate a habit of sloppy work to offset our loss of energy. Pretty amazing thought, isn't it? So what if we want our kids to learn how to give their best effort? Well, they have to know how to monitor their own energy. And sometimes that stamina takes time to develop. They can only do a word and give all their concentration, but that will eventually build to a sentence, to a paragraph, to a paper, if they are allowed to grow and are not required to do too much too soon. So anyway, this is what I wanted to talk about. Before we go, tell me if you're trick-or-treating tonight and if you're a parent who dresses in a costume or doesn't. Because I never did. Now, yesterday in Columbus, Ohio, they did Halloween a night early. So my boyfriend and I drove up to Columbus to be with my grandson, his grandson, and they gave us unicorn masks. I wish I had it. I'd put it on. It's very cute. I gave it back to them. But we wore our little unicorn masks. He was a sloth. Normally, I do not dress up. I'm usually the candy giver, or I walk with the kids in my very ordinary clothes. Oh my goodness. I was trying to think back, like, what is the earliest memory I have of a Halloween costume? We used to go like to the Five and Dime, which that word by itself dates me like crazy. But anyway, in the 1960s, you'd go down and you'd pick out this box and it would have one of those plastic masks and a little outfit. And I remember when I was like 4 or 5, I got a witch costume. And I was so excited because the mask had a huge green wart on it. And so apparently, I hid behind a door so that when my dad got home from work, I could scare him. And I can remember we had one of these walls that had like mirror tiles on it that were very popular in the 1960s. And I came around the corner and there was my dad and I scared him and he acted in all the appropriate ways. But I can still remember our reflection in those mirrors from Halloween, which was so much fun. The other very memorable costume is one year I got very sick, probably in 3rd grade maybe, and my mom was sick too, and I had to stay home from school, but I was so eager to go trick-or-treating, and so my mom, in a moment of genius mothering, took a sheet. I don't even know if it was off the bed or out of the cabinets, but took a sheet and got out her sewing machine. And she sewed me an angel costume while we were recovering that day. And I still got to go trick or treating. So there are memories that you are embedding in your children's lives. And the lessons they're learning are not only academic, they're learning memories of what it means to be a family, what it means to pretend to be something you're not, and going door to door and being friendly to your neighbors. What an incredible and fun holiday Halloween is. Ani says she usually just draws whiskers on her face Doesn't have to be a specific animal, but it's low effort festive. That's what my daughter did. She had zebra stripes. Her husband had some kind of animal mask. I think that's a fantastic way to go. My son and his wife, the whole family picks like a theme. Like one year they did Bob's Burgers, one year they did the Bluey family. So yeah, those of you who dress up with your kids, hats off to you. That's incredible. Well, thank you for joining me. Is this a format you enjoyed? Would you like me to do this again? Because I enjoyed it, but let's make sure all of you did. I'm giving you some hearts because it really meant a lot to me that you came live. Um, yeah. And, if you're a new subscriber, thank you for being here. Oh, thank you. Wonderful. Well, go into the chat. Give me some topics you'd like me to cover, and we'll get these going because I really love lives, and Substack notifies everybody by email. Yes, Courtney. Hi, Courtney. Oh my gosh. I love that you're here. Periscope all over again. Yay. You guys, Courtney's a poet. She's amazing. You should follow her. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm so glad you're here, and this will be saved. You can watch it on replay or share it with your friends, and I look forward to doing this with you again. Happy Halloween. Oh, I should have told you. Somebody said you'd like to know more about delight and wonder in the older years. We will get to that for sure. This week's podcast is all about atmosphere, discipline, and a life for Brave Writer. And let me just tell you, it is the podcast I want everyone to listen to. It carries on with this theme as an alternative to performance and evaluation in homeschooling. All right, now I'm really going. Bye, everyone.